These are the opinions of Nick Webb, Mike Carrazzo, Jim Reed. They are not the opinions of Ryerson. This is not investment advice. We recommend you do your own research, but we're going to do our best to get you the information that's live and in front of us right now within the commodities world. And with that said, I'm going to kick it over to Jim Reed. Jim is he's our director of risk management for the West Coast of Ryerson. So that's basically going to be the Colorado Rockies West. I would say his particular expertise is going to be most poignantly within the aluminum space and the stainless world. And today we're going to have Jim as our expertise covering the stainless markets, because there's a lot going on there as well as some of the other markets. But Jim, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great. First of all, the director of supply chain for the West, definitely not a risk manager.
Oh, apologies. Apologies. I was getting a little selfish on that.
I also cover Mexico too, for those of you that have some questions for the Mexican market. We definitely can get into those. So let's first look at the mill outlook right now for 2022. Who's on allocation, who's not on allocation, what is going on? We'll start up in Ohio with Cleveland-Cliffs, better known as AK Steel, for those of you in the past. They are very specialized grades and gauges, and they are on allocation. There's no spot tons available unless you have a contract with Cleveland-Cliffs. If we come down to Pennsylvania with Allegheny, they are producing no vanilla grades of stainless like 304 or 316, right? They are basically producing specialty grades and plate mill plates, so large plate products. And there is no allocation currently out of Allegheny. If we keep on coming down, if we go to Oticampo in Alabama, they are a big supplier of cold roll product. They are very much allocated. So anything cold roll like 2B, BA, number 4, we are still very much in allocation with that, with Oticampo. CMP for them is not as much allocated. We can get some CMP product from them, and it is available. If we talk about Oticampo's sister company down in Mexico, in St. Louis, TC, they are definitely allocated. No product or spot is available from them unless you have a contract with Mexinox down in Mexico, Oticampo. North American Stainless in Kentucky, they are very much allocated. Again, all the cold roll, like number 4, 2B, BA, 2D, it's all very much allocated, and as well as bar products. Anything coming out of NAS with bar products is definitely on allocation. Again, CMP product as well as plate mill product or discrete plate is more readily available, not on allocation. And there are some angles coming out of North American Stainless that are also not currently allocated. We can get some tons of angles should anybody need them.
Hey, Jim, a couple quick questions for you. One would be, obviously it looks like nearly every stainless mill within at least America, maybe North America, is on allocation right now. When we talk about that term allocation, it sounds pretty limited in terms of what's available. Are there any buffers up or down if somebody has a contract with Ryerson or another supplier? Do the stainless mills allow for any flex on that if your forecast exceeds, or if your actual demand exceeds your forecast?
Sure, great question. And normally the bill of materials that we deal with both with the mills, they give us 1%, 5%, 10% plus or minus, right? But normally we're hitting right at the allocation. If for example, if we go over the allocated tons that the mills have given us, they come back to us and tell us to rebalance our books. They are only taking so many tons. So we're very careful with that. Absolutely.
Like 1 in, 1 out at the club.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. The other question I had was, as we look at the map here, basically all the stainless mills are going to be east of Texas. You cover the West Coast. Does that make your market more import dynamic, or is a lot of this stainless traveling a long ways?
Currently, with all the current issues with, say, Section 232, with the port issue, with the congestion at the ports, a lot of our stainless does travel from east to west for sure. Is the West Coast an import market? Absolutely it is. And we do participate in the import market also, albeit currently lead times are extended. And you'll see lead times right now are into July arrival for the West Coast. And that's if we get it to the port and able to get it unloaded, right? But there is definitely an import market on the West. and we do use that. We do participate, absolutely.
Perfect.
Overall demand is still pretty strong. So far, we've seen 2 price increase announcements year to date, and this is only March. Last year, for comparison, out of the 12 months, we received price increases 9 of those 12 months. So strap in, buckle up. You know, things have just started so far for the stainless mills. As I mentioned, offshore is available. Right now, X-Mill June, July arrival, July, August, depending on where it's coming into the US. All ports of entry are still very much congested. For example, I was on a call earlier, and there was a vessel that arrived in the end of December in the port of Los Angeles. It's not even at berth yet. We're waiting for it. We have another couple of weeks. Luckily for me, it's not stainless, but it is for one of my accounts out here on the West Coast that deals with carbon. So it's been a challenge, right? Again, ferritic and austenitic co-roll, like number 4, 2B, 2D, still very much allocated across the board, right? CMP, definitely not as tight. There are some depots. The mills are starting to put some depot stock in, albeit rather small, but they are putting some depot stock in. All grades polished are very tight. The polishing lines at the domestic mills are backed up a lot, matter of fact, as well as the outside processors. If we want to send 2B coils and send them to get polished, they're running anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks to get things polished. So all things polished are still very, very tight. Again, I'll just touch base again. CMP, plate mill plate or discrete plate and angle are available. None of those are being allocated currently. So we do have some flexibility for that. Absolutely.
Hey, Jim, question.
Sure.
Yeah, question for you on the polish side. So in terms of, you know, that market being as tight as it is, in your opinion, is that more function of a certain end market being exceptionally strong on the demand side, or do you think that's more a function of just us being limited on capacity for polishing equipment?
I think it's a combination of both, quite frankly. We know some of the end markets definitely have picked up the need to polish, like the appliance market, if you will, right? As well as polishing seems to always be a problem at the mills, right? As far as the process it has to go through. So I think it's a combination of both. Absolutely. Yeah.
Jim, on the allocation side question here, is that vary on grade? In other words, is like 200 and 400 series more difficult to get than say 300?
See, now we're really getting into the details. That is a great question because yes, it is. We actually have certain buckets per mill, per grade, per thickness of gauge. So it's very much allocated by grades as well as gauges and widths. So yes, it is. And that's what we do at Ryerson. We have to balance that book so it all comes out right. So we get everything that we need. Yep.
And kind of maybe kind of step back and kind of a basic question. When something's on allocation, how long does it usually take to get back, right? Like, what does that mean long term? Like, how long do you typically have to wait?
Yeah, before we get back to our normal supply without having allocation, you know, that's a great question. It would be nice, and I'm not saying this, it would be nice if the second half loosened up a little bit, right, for allocation, so add a little bit more flexibility. But I am telling you right now, it's not anticipated to loosen up for the second half. Talking to the mills, they're still anticipating it to be tight for the second half for sure. We can tell you as far as on the bar products that North American Stainless supplies, there'll be no let up at all on allocation for the balance of the year. And as far as the flat roll from both Outokumpu as well as NAS, we're not expecting any loosening of the allocation for the balance of 2022.
Amazing.
And Jim, this question just came in. Forgive me if you covered it, but are offshore markets also on allocation?
Not as much so. Some of the Asian markets are very busy themselves with demand. They did expect a little bit more increase after the Chinese New Year than after the Olympics, right, in China. So there are some. There is more allocation. We're limited on the amount of tons coming in because there's only certain mills that can come into the U.S. for sure, right? We don't receive any Chinese co-roll into the U.S. because of dumping duties that were put in place back in 15 or 16, and that now with Section 232, the other mills like South Korea has a quota, Taiwan we pay the duty. So there is, but it's not as tight, if you will. Like I received an offshore offer yesterday, so we're going to look at the offshore offer and probably make a buy.
And then here it comes. Here's a question from the audience. Is the price all related to nickel increases and the Russia-Ukraine crisis?
No, I'd have to say it's not. It definitely, the increasing that we're seeing now are related to some of the nickel pricing, but you're seeing that in the surcharges, right? As well as the other components of the surcharges, will it be silicon, whatever it be. But this is just overall energy, overall labor, just the ability for the mills to keep up and the overall demand. So it's definitely not all related to the Ukraine-Russian situation. We were in this situation before this happened a couple of weeks ago. We were in the same situation.
Jim, the Cup of Joe audience doesn't waste any time getting to the tough questions. I apologize for that.
Okay, hit me.
Well, one in particular is any mills increasing capacity or adding a new mill on the stainless side.
I've heard nothing domestically other than there's going to be a new line put into one of the domestic bar mills for shot blasting, but nothing for flat roll as far as I can tell. Nothing that I've heard to this point.
And I will piggyback on Jim's answer there. I actually have a slide at the very end of his presentation that will cover not domestic, but some of the foreign production increases that will be coming or expected to come.